Mrs. Vladka Skopcova as your speaker. Vladka has 20 years' experience of teaching both young learners and adults in a range of situations. Having completed her CELTA and DELTA, she started working as a DOS. Vladka currently divides her time between teaching and teacher training. She has been working for Macmillan Education since 2014.
Thank you very much. So hello to all your homes or teachers' offices. Hello from the Czech Republic. I'm really honored to be here and thank you for having me, really. So before we start with the games, I just would like to mention that some of you are primary teachers, while some of you teach at secondary schools. So it's all the activities are prepared in the way that it's possible to modify them for your students for different levels, different ages. So I'll always give you some hints how to differentiate, to change the activity a little bit so that it's useful for hopefully all of you. And of course, I would also like to invite you to be active in the chat or to at least try the activities on your own, because if you try it yourself, I think that it will help you to remember the activities better. That's one thing. And another one is that because you are the specialist about your students, you know them best. So you'll be easily able to change the activities so that they suit their needs. Okay, so at the moment, I'll start sharing my presentation. So please let me know if you can see it. Great. Well, the first thing, of course, why we play games is to have some fun. So as it's the school year, I hope that we as teachers can have some fun as well. So I prepared a few grammar jokes for teachers. The first one is coming here. So why should you never date an apostrophe? Yeah, be careful. They're too possessive, definitely. Another one. What do you call Santa's little helpers? Yeah, that's one at like B1 level. So they're subordinate clauses. And the final one, which dinosaur know the most words? Yeah, thank you, Larissa. Amazing. That's him. Yeah. Very good. No T-Rex here. Yeah, Thesaurus is the most important for us, for the teachers. Great. Okay. So that was the jokes for us, but let's start with the games themselves. So as mentioned, we play games to have fun, definitely. But on the other hand, I think that we should always have the feeling behind the fun. We should always think about what our aim is and why we really bring the game to the lesson so that it makes sense and it helps the children or students to learn and to progress. So here are some more reasons why you probably will be interested in incorporating games like practicing or revising target language, giving them some relevant content which would help them understand the new grammar. And of course, support all the other skills. Well, Dave today was speaking about creative thinking, about critical thinking. So these are all the things which are hidden in our language games and which we definitely want to support. And the very final thing before we hop in the list of games is some kind of ideas of what to do before you start playing so that you are really successful with the game. I think that the number one topic is seating. So before we start playing, we should tell our learners whether they would work on their own, whether they would be in pairs or whether they create groups. And they should do it. That should be the first thing we always ask them to do, to find the pair or to create the group of 4 and so on and so forth. Then we should give them some clear instructions. So they should know whether they, for example, need a piece of paper, whether they need a pen, whether they are going to just whisper or whether they can run around. So this is everything we should tell them before. And preferably check it with some kind of instruction checking questions, right? So will you really need a pen for this game? Or can you talk to the person sitting next to you? Of course, the point of each game is either a time limit, so they would get 5 minutes to do something, or they have to know what the final task is. So that's the end of the game when you have something. So again, this will definitely help you to set the clear rules so that they all know. And of course, last but not least, some kind of physical safety, noise level rules. Again, something to mention, because otherwise some other teacher can come to your room and can complain about how noisy the kids are and how much they enjoy your English lesson rather than their math lesson, right? In the session, we will go from the lead-in stage, which is usually the opening stage of a grammar lesson, through presentation to the practice. So starting with a lead-in session and talking about some younger learners, I prepared an idea of a lesson where we are going to read or watch something at the beginning. And your task, if you are willing to help me, is to find out what's the story about. I'll give you some hints, like individual words, and I'll ask you to join in if you have any idea what story the kids are supposed to be either reading or watching. Okay, what about if I add a forest to the basket? Oh, great. Yeah, Larissa, thank you. That was a very fast answer. Okay, I've got some more words. So could you maybe give me some hints you would expect to describe the Little Red Riding Hood story? What other things do you find important in this story? Yeah, the wolf, great. Red, exactly, and danger, surprise. Beautiful. Hunter, grandma, great. Perfect ideas. You actually have the same ideas as I had, right? Having the wolf at the last one. So great. So that's the Little Red Riding Hood. I think this is a very easy and a kind of very fast game, but it would give the kids the moment of surprise. There's some kind of mystery. And then asking them for some extra words, there could be a kind of nice vocab practice, which would prepare them for the whole situation which is coming. Of course, this you might find a little bit boring for older kids. So here I was thinking about another way, which basically covers the same idea. The question is like, what's our topic today? But instead of words, I've prepared some pictures. So have you got the idea of what the lesson for teenagers might be about? Traveling, that's a good tip. It's not traveling. Extreme sports, very good ideas. Very good ideas. But it's not extreme sports. Hobbies, free time activities. Yes, we are getting closer and closer. Exactly. I'll add you one more picture. And I will give you the hint that our topic starts with the letter E. Entertainment is great tip. Okay. All right. So you'll be surprised maybe when I say that the topic will be experiences, right? So here again, you can get some more options to ask your students what they would add to those pictures, what experiences they have, especially now after the summer holiday. They might have lots of new experiences and might be a great idea to open the lesson with what they basically like. And supposing your students can use mobile phones in their lessons, then again, they will definitely have tons of pictures like I've shown you. So here you would have, I would say, a long time for kind of discussion or presenting what they've experienced. Right, okay, so let's move on. But just before I move, I will tell you that when I use some pictures or ideas coming from textbooks, I'm going to use Academy Stars, which you might have the idea when you saw the Red Riding Hood. And then for the teenagers, I would use the support of Get Involved, which are both textbooks from Macmillan Education used for primary and secondary schools. The part of presentation. So we've opened our lessons. We are going back to the Little Red Riding Hood. And today, with the picture of the new granny, I would like to show the children how to use have got. So I might prepare basically the same presentation as I'm using at the moment. And I might ask the children whether they remember what they heard or read, either in the story or in the film, whether they can remember what the girl told her granny, what she had. So hopefully somebody would help me that one of the parts of the body is this one. And then I would ask them, like, what it was it big? Was it small? Was it long or short? Huge, lovely. And you're definitely right with huge. I would probably go for big, supposing that these are kind of little kids. So then big might be enough for the grammar. But if they understand huge or large, that's definitely an option. Then we can talk about the fact that we change have got into got. And we can put the words together, and then we can discuss how to change the sentence so that it works at this moment. Yeah, perfect. Excellent. So definitely small would go in here because we change it into a negative, which rather than saying you have not got, we would say you haven't got. Right, super. So going through these colorful panels, we might basically present the new language, show our pupils how the new grammar works. And what's amazing behind the colors is that with academic stars, and if you have them, you already know it. If you don't have them, don't worry, you can actually create something similar on your own without having the book at the moment, is that you've got a special color coding system, and the children know that each color represents a specific piece of grammar or like a specific word type. So they know what is a negative verb, they know what color goes for nouns or noun phrases, and so on and so forth. And then, thanks to this, lots of games can come to your classroom because you slowly create these tiny little pieces of paper with the kids. So what happens is that the children usually rewrite some of the sentences on the pieces of paper according to the color coding, or they even think about their own words they already know. And then you can play lots of games having these. So, for example, you can ask them to use their cards to create new sentences. So the children would make something which is either connected with themselves, or maybe they can speak about their friends. Maybe they know somebody who has pink hair, and then they can compare it to somebody who actually hasn't got any pink hair. You can also play a game where you ask them to change always just one word from the sentence. So you can, for example, say that, for example, they have to change the yellow part. So they have to find another noun which would fit in the sentence so that the sentence still makes sense. Then you can ask them to change the brown part. And again, they have to think about grammar more deeply because they have to check whether people is haven't got or hasn't got. And he and she must be the one with S, extra S. So this is something which is quite creative. Children love it because they can move things while doing it, and they can really practice grammar in a very natural way. At the moment, we are going back to our teenage class because, of course, they probably wouldn't be interested in our story about the Little Red Riding Hood. So with the teenagers, I would rather pick up a picture like this, for example, and I would ask them, what do they think about the picture? So, for example, what are the names of these girls singing and playing the guitar? Have you got any tips for me? Have you got any ideas what the names could be? Oh, Hannah and Emilia. Okay, cool names. Very good. Yeah, they look like great teenager. Okay. Oh, Jolan. Okay, very good. Super. So they could be that. And now, oh, Laura and Sasha. Amazing, amazing. So that it's a bit up to you what names you pick up from the kids. And then the situation actually becomes much more personal. So now we have Hannah and Millie. Okay, so we've got Hannah and Millie. And now you tell me, what do you think? How old are they? They could be 16. Okay, 14. So hopefully the same age as your students at the moment are, so that they can relate to them. And what's their relationship? Okay, cousins, great, super, or sisters even, right? So they might have a great band, a family band, okay, or the babies, yeah, lovely. So lots of options, okay. You see how much vocabulary we can practice just opening a grammar lesson, right? And what are their hobbies? So obviously, singing music, yeah, definitely playing the guitar, singing, right? Maybe modeling or something, because they want to be beautiful when they're on the stage, right? And then I can get to my topic, which is actually interesting for me, and it could be that, like, what is their coolest music experience? When the kids are already interested, yeah, and could probably say something like, okay, they've seen a rock concert of Imagine Dragons, fantastic. Yeah, that's what teenagers love at the moment, right? I think that's the dream of all the kids. Yeah, perfect. And now I've got interested kids. I've got a story about those two, let's say, sisters who are at the same age as they are, who love music and who have been to a concert of Imagine Dragons. And it's very easy for me to start asking the kids, okay, why do you think it's cool to be at the rock concert? Why is it great to listen to Imagine Dragons? What's your favorite song? What about you? Have you got the experience with the concert? And hopefully, sooner or later, some children, usually the ones who are the strong English students, they would start using, sooner or later, they would start using present perfect. So maybe one of the kids would say that they have played for the whole school, or they have met Ping. Okay, I didn't have the idea of Imagine Dragons. You were better than me. I thought only of Ping when I was preparing this. So this is something what would come from the kids, and hopefully we can start building the idea of grammar on that. We can then introduce that this is present perfect. We can, again, using some kind of color coding, if they already know, because they studied at primary school in the same way. So we can try to explain that you've got the person with have, has, then you need the verb in the third form. And then, of course, you've got all the other pieces of information which are relevant for the sentence. And of course, making it negative is haven't or hasn't, and showing a timeline where we know that the thing has happened, but we don't know when. And what's important is that it is somewhere before now, right? And this way, we can kind of hide the presentation into a kind of game, into a kind of mystery, where at the beginning, there were some girls who the children didn't know, but now they have a story about them, and they somehow related to their story and can imagine the situation which we are starting to talk about, and that's the present perfect. Of course, I have the modification of our first activity, the one with the colorful papers for little kids at primary school. So here we've got the version for the secondary school students. And the idea of this game is that the students take a piece of paper and they write a sentence which uses the target grammar. So our grammar here was present perfect. So we've got a sentence saying, I have never been to New York. And as everybody prepares one sentence, which is just like something they want to write down, what's important is that you always have to check the sentence. Otherwise, then the activity might not work. But when you check the sentence, the children copy it once more, and then they cut the copied part in pieces. The original sentence is upside down, just next to the pieces. And then you organize the class in the way that they move from one desk to another, and they can try to put the sentences together on their own again. And to find out whether they are right, they can always check the original sentence, which was produced by the first student. So they try it, check it. If everything is okay, they put it back, the original sentence upside down. They shuffle all the pieces of paper so that the new student who is coming can create the sentence again. So it's not that colorful, but I think for teenagers, definitely much more convenient. And now let's have a look at lots of games together, which would be used to practice basically any grammar you can think of. So the first activity is called a true or false game. This activity is done in the way that you prepare a list of some words. Of course, it again depends on what kind of grammar you would like to practice. This grammar is prepared for, let's say, A2 students who are going to practice present simple. But you can have it with children practicing, for example, have got, or you can go to definitely much more complicated tenses. In this one, the first student is to choose one of the verbs, and they create a sentence about themselves. So, for example, I would say, I usually get up at 6 o'clock. Then this student nominates somebody else. Like I usually use a ball in the classroom that the children just throw the ball to somebody who they want to continue. But if you don't have a ball, that's of course not a problem. They can just name another person. So they would nominate another student, and the next student would say whether it's true or false. So, for example, say, yeah, it's true that you get up at 6, and it would be true. And the person would then continue picking up their own word and again creating a sentence about them, either true or false, and would ask another person to decide whether they think that it's true or not. Another activity would be a question game. Here, I would like you to participate because it's much easier to imagine how the whole game works, because it has kind of 3 stages. So at the very beginning, you as a teacher prepare a set of questions. Here, as you can see, I focus mostly on present perfect, but again, whatever grammar you want to practice, the grammar you would use in the questions. You probably wouldn't show the questions to your students as I did here. I just wanted you to see them. But in real life, I wouldn't show them the questions. I would just read them and ask them to write their answers on a piece of paper. So the first question, and I would ask you to write your answers as well, would be, have you ever been to New York? Number 2, what is the most expensive thing you've bought? Number 3, how many books have you read this year? Number 4, have you worked at your school for a long time? And number 5, who have you talked to this afternoon? All right. So now you've got 5 answers in front of you. I'll show you mine. Maybe some of them are the same. I could read that somebody said that you also haven't been to New York. So we've got the same experiences. We share something. Now, I would ask you the other way around. What was the question for the answer, no, I haven't? Can you still remember? Have you ever been to New York? Exactly. Excellent. Perfect. Great. Lovely. Mm-hmm. What about the question for a car? Was the most expensive thing you bought? Beautiful. Fantastic. More than 20. How many books have you read this year? Wow, you've got a great memory. Right. Super. Absolutely. Yes, for 11 years. Aha. Have you worked for a long time in your school? Exactly. And not really. Yeah. Have you got to somebody this afternoon? Great. Perfect. So I would say that you've got a great memory. With the students, it might be a bit more difficult for them because it's not just that they can remember it, but we push them to practice present perfect. And from my experience, students usually have troubles to think about questions. They are great at answering things because they are used to answering our questions or the questions in the textbooks. But whenever I ask them to create their own questions, they're kind of hesitant and they don't know what to ask about and how to do it. So when you have that kind of model a few minutes before we ask them to do it again, so it helps them a lot to get lots of confidence. Just for check, here are the answers. And now we are going to move one more step further. You get the answers again, but this time, I want you to think of a different set of questions which would bring the same answers. So for me, I created a question asking, have you ever visited Bran Castle? So what do you think would be my own answer for this question? Which of those 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is the correct one? Yeah, absolutely. No, I haven't. Unfortunately, I've seen lots of pictures and I really love the castle. So I hope that one day I could visit it. But of course, at the moment, the right answer is no, I haven't. So can anybody think of any other question which would be relevant for some of these answers? Oh, have you ever slept under the stars? Lovely. How many students are in your class? Oh, more than 20, yes. That's it. Yeah, I don't know how many students you usually have in Romania, but in our schools, it's usually about like 25, 30, even sometimes about 30. Have you lived here long? Mm-hmm. So, yeah, okay, so that's the same, right? I guess that our school systems would be pretty similar. Right. Okay, super. So here you can see how this can be effective, because in the first round, the students just answer, which is something they are good at. Then in the second round, they try to recall your questions. And in the same third round, they focus on their own questions, which they have to create. So here are basically 3 ways how they practice the new grammar in a kind of restricted way, but still they can some their own experience into that. They can talk or write about something they like and they find important. Of course, sometimes you would be interested in making the game a little bit different, and might have different students, right? We have the fast finishers who are always ready. On the other hand, we would have some slower students who need some kind of support. So what I sometimes do with my students is that I use this activity after we read a kind of interview text. So in the interview, there are always lots of questions, and I told them that they can pick up, let's say, 3 or 4 questions. And as soon as they do it, then I ask them to write their own answers for the questions according to what they through, rather than the celebrity usually which answered the question in the text we read. Another option is that if I know that some of the students are too weak and wouldn't be able to create their own questions, I give them some help. So they can get the hints, like here, for example, I would give them, you ever meet celebrity? And when they have this, they would probably be able to create their own questions, like, have you ever met a celebrity? So this is something what I can do to help them. And on the other hand, I can ask the fast finishers or the advanced students if they can create their own question without any help. And then it would, of course, give them a challenging task because they have no help and they just have to bring some of their own ideas and put it together with their knowledge of the grammar. A very popular game, especially with younger students, is a drawing game called Draw a Sentence. It brings you lots of fun to the classroom. And what is great is if you put the students either in pairs or in very small groups. I think that 3 or at maximum 4 children are enough, because if there are more than, let's say, 3-4 kids, what will happen is that only 2 children will cooperate and the rest will probably not take part in the activity a lot. The point is that prepare a set of sentences using a specific grammar. Here, as I've already mentioned, it would be to be going to. What happens is that the students get the pack of, let's say, 10 sentences with to be going to. They are put face down so that nobody can read what's written on the cards. And then when the game starts, the first person can take the first card. They read the sentence on their own. They can't show it to anybody. It's a secret. And they have to draw what's happening. So here's my drawing. Please don't say that I'm going to watch TV or I'm going to kill some flies. But what do you think did I want to draw in this picture? Yeah, perfect. Thank you. You got it. Yeah, play tennis. Okay, so I'm not the worst drawer in the world. Okay, because you managed to find activity. Perfect. Absolutely. So whenever the person in the group is successful and the other people find out what the sentence was, so then that's the turn for another person who would take another card, again, read it secretly and draw their own picture. And the rest of the group guesses what they are drawing again. So this way, they have to practice the specific piece of grammar because it's always on that piece of paper. It's always in the sentence they have to draw. So everybody has to use I am going to. You can put it into any other context. You can use present simple, continuous, past simple, continuous, future tenses, anything is possible. You just always need to tell the students before you start the activity what grammar is included. And as I've mentioned already at the beginning, you either tell them that there is a limit of, let's say, 5 minutes. After 5 minutes, they can count the number of sentences they were able to draw and guess. Or you will tell them that they have to go through all the pieces of paper with all the sentences they have on their desk. And when they are finished, they are the first ones. So this is really up to you, whether you want to give them a strict time limit or whether you want to give them just the time they all need. So probably at the end of the lesson, you will be more strict and you would ask them just for a specific time. If you have like lots of time in front of you, so then of course they can enjoy all the sentences and they can draw as much as they need. An alternative to drawing a sentence would be miming a sentence. So this option is quite fast. I would say it's much more faster than the one when they just draw, because miming is something when the kids need just a few seconds to show the others the activity. This is more convenient for younger kids because teenagers, as you know, usually find it a bit strange to move in front of the others. It's embarrassing, of course, as you know, and therefore I would recommend it rather for younger pupils. And a guessing game. Of course, we could start with that guessing we've already tried with our singing and playing duo, but any guesses who this could be? Okay, my nephew, right? Yeah, that's my son. That's my son. Yeah, I don't have any nephews, unfortunately, at the moment. I'm still waiting for them and hope that I'll get one. But that's my son. Of course, it's his birthday. And the question actually is, what has happened before we took this picture? Okay, yeah, we sang happy birthday. That's true, definitely. Okay, bought a cake. Mm-hmm. Okay, made a wish. Yeah. We explain him that it's necessary to make a wish. That's true. Excellent. Super. So there were all the things. Okay, he slept. That's also true. Yeah. We let him sleep so that he was full of energy for the celebration. Yes. Lovely. And what's going to happen? We're going to eat the cake. Yeah, he's going to blow the candle. Yeah, perfect. Super. Okay, there's going to be an empty plate. Yeah. Yeah, lots of cleaning. Absolutely. And lots of washing up. Yeah, absolutely. Super. Okay, great ideas. This is a game which teenagers love. Supposing that there is a chance that they would use their mobiles, or if you don't like them to use their mobiles, if they know in advance that they can prepare 3-4 pictures from their mobile and they can print them out, or they can just prepare them somewhere in a Word document or something, or share them on a cloud with the others. That's a great practice because they will always choose the pictures they somehow relate to, they find funny, they find interesting. And then the stories behind the pictures for the teenagers are very, very important. So when they ask their friends what has happened and what is going to happen, they will be always keen on talking. And using this, you can practice lots of kind of complex grammar, because has happened would be present perfect, is going to or will happen. You can say like, what do you think will happen? And you can even practice the will future, not just going to. So then they would practice kind of different structures, and that might make it a very communicative activity. Talking about personalization, of course, as soon as your students bring any pictures, that's the way how we get them interested and we get them into a kind of game. But I also love this activity, which comes from Get Involved. And it's an activity you can either use because it's in a book, or you can create it on your own. The idea here is that the students, first of all, have to fill in the gaps, which is a grammar part. So my partner finds it easier to study in the morning than the evening. But then the fun part starts, because the student's task is to decide whether it's true or false for their partner. So again, at the beginning of a school year, I think that this could be a kind of nice activity, especially when you have some new students in your group and the students don't know each other, or maybe they forgot, or they changed lots of habits during the summer break. So this way, you can, again, try to create some kind of connections between them, because they will think about their partners, whether they do it this way or not. Or if you want to make it even more interesting, you can ask them to create the sentence and then, instead of the word my partner, to add a name of somebody who goes to the same class. So then maybe what they will create is that they will say that maybe John finds it easier to study in the morning than the evening. And doing this way, they can go to their classmate and they can ask him whether he really likes it this way and whether he finds it easier to study in the morning. And I think that you can get a kind of very communicative activity in which the students would mingle around the classroom, and they would get lots of personal details about each other, and they would learn how the others live, or how the others find things interesting. So again, this would be something which would start with a little bit of grammar, but would definitely change into a game, and you can count the points of how many true sentences they manage to create, and it could be very, very interesting at the end to see who knows their classmates best. A very easy game which you can, whenever you have just a few minutes at the end of the lesson, and you don't want to spend it just like telling them, okay, like I don't know, but maybe we can read a bit of something. We can just use this game, which works in the way that you draw some kind of 2 staircases, which both finishes with the sea where the dangerous shark is, right? The students either play in pairs, or if you want to control the whole activity, you can put them into 2 groups. And the main idea is that as soon as they make a mistake or do something wrong based on what you ask them to do, they move 1 step down. And it goes one by one till they get to the shark. Of course, the idea is not to get eaten by the end of the lesson. As I've said, this activity is very easy. So you can use irregular verbs. You can just give them the infinitive, and they have to give you the past form. Or you can use comparative superlative. So again, you say big, and they have to finish with bigger, the biggest. It can be much and many. So you say chocolate, and they have to decide whether it's much or many. I can also recommend the version when the children translate. They can either just translate single words, or I sometimes, if I have enough time, I give them the whole sentences. So they have a piece of paper, or if we have like the big board, so they can write the sentence on the board. And if it's correct, it's okay. If it's not correct, they just have to move 1 step down. So this way, you can practice lots of grammar and, of course, lots of vocabulary. And it's very playful. The children, of course, try not to get beaten by the shark, and they're motivated to get the right answers. A kind of similar activity, which is a bit more complex and could be used for more specific grammar, is a game called 4 Corners. You might know this activity, which is taken from the kind of collaborative learning idea, where children go to different corners and then they share what they've learned. This one is a bit more easier, not more, but it's easier. It works in that on 4 pieces of paper, you write A, B, C, and D, and you put it visibly in each corner of either the classroom, if you play in the classroom, but it can be maybe just a carpet you are using at that moment. So you basically need an area which somehow has 4 corners, and in each corner it must be clear what letter the corner represents. So when you take just an A4 piece of paper with a felt pen, you write a letter, it's obviously visible enough. Then you can put on the board a question, like, for example, which word would you fill in this gap so that the sentence is correct? What's important is that you give the children some time to think, you know your children best, so you know whether they need 10 seconds or 15 seconds. So at that moment, they are all standing in the middle of the room or the space you're using. And as soon as the time's up, you can ring the bell and the students have to move to the corner which they think represents the right answer. So which corner would you suggest in this case? Which one would you say is the best one? Right. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we will all meet in D. This way you can go on. You can either give the students the whole list of tasks and they can just like open that piece with one of the questions or sentences, or you can use the whiteboard and always show them just one of the sentences. If you don't have so much time, or if you don't want to spend so much time on such a game, what you can do is to move to maybe just 3 corners. The rules are the same. You have 3 corners in which you have some specific answers. Like here, supposing I would just practice prepositions is at, in, and on. Again, all the kids are in the middle of the classroom. And as soon as I say, for example, morning, they have 5 seconds to decide. Then I ring the bell and they run, hopefully, to the corner with at or in or on. Okay, you're probably too okay. In, thank you. I know that you're very tired because you've been here for a long time, but that's it. Yeah, so they would run to that in corner, like in the morning. Great. Well, the other options again might be, for example, much and many, or you can just basically read a sentence and they can decide whether the sentence is correct or incorrect. So one of the corners could be correct, the other one is incorrect. And they again move to the corners. The same gerund and infinitive. They basically move so that they decide which answer is the best. Usually the younger learners you have, the more happy about this activity they are, because there is lots of that TPR activities for young learners and they love moving. They have lots of extra energy, which teenagers usually don't have. And they need to move to get rid of that energy. These teenagers, when they are like especially very, very tired, I use a piece of paper sometimes and they draw their own 4 corners and they just show me either on that piece of paper or they have those tiny little whiteboards for themselves and they can do it on the whiteboards. Supposing you can use mobiles in your classes, and I don't know whether it's okay because the policies are quite different at various schools. So there are, of course, lots of apps in which you can go into that kind of voting system. So then for teenagers, that would be probably the most interesting is when they can vote on their mobiles. But as I said, it could be a problem which wouldn't go with your school rules. And last but not least, I wanted to mention a few evergreens because, of course, there are like tons of games we like playing. I don't know if you have it the same way, but I sometimes play one game for a long time. Then I find it a bit boring. So I stop playing it. And then after years, I find it again. And I can't understand why I haven't played it for such a long time. So here, I would mention some of those games which are very popular. Maybe you know all of them, but maybe you forget using some of those. So this school year, that might be something you would try again. So listen and clap when you hear. So that's that like very easy game which just supports that kind of passive thinking about new grammar or new language. When the children listen to a story or they listen to somebody just speaking, and their task is either to clap or raise their hand when they see that specific piece of grammar. So let's say clap each time you hear a preposition, or clap each time you hear the past tense, or clap each time you hear will. This way, the children or even students would learn how to use the new language communicatively. Grammar auction, well, one of my favorites. I really love playing grammar auction. It's something you can do on your own in the way that you already know what kind of mistakes the students are going to make. So you prepare your list of sentences. Some of them are correct, some of them are incorrect, and the students have to bet on whether the sentence is correct or incorrect. This is one way that you do it on your own. The other way is that you use the real sentences coming, for example, from your students' homework or a piece of writing. And I think that it brings like lots of fun to the classroom because nobody really cares that they're doing grammar, but everybody wants to win. So I think this is very, very popular with all ages because there are gamblers everywhere. First to five, an old game, very old game, in which you ask the students to think about one group which you define somehow. So, for example, I would say that I want them to think about words which they can put together with much, and their task would be to write 5 of these words. Again, the first one is the winner. So it could be much, many. I can ask them to write 5 words which would be followed by a gerund, 5 words which would be followed by an infinitive, 5 verbs which might be followed by both. I might ask them to write down 5 irregular verbs. I might ask them to write 5 regular verbs. And of course, I might find some specific things around that as well. So this is a very, very fast game, but very popular again. Chain translation needs a bit more time, but I think it's quite useful because there are always some students or pupils who need to translate things into their first language because otherwise the language might be too complex for them. And the chain translation, I always start in the way that at the beginning of the game, everybody has a piece of paper. And on the top of that piece of paper, there is one sentence in their first language that's prepared by me. Their task is to translate the sentence into English, and then they have to fold the paper so that the English sentence is still visible, but the next person can't see the original sentence in their own language. They pass the paper to the right. And then it means that in front of the person, there is a new sentence which is in English. So they have to translate it in one. Again, they fold it and pass it on. This way, the paper is moving around the classroom, or like the papers, because everybody had the piece of paper at the beginning. And then at the end, we could see how they did, like basically like where we got from the original sentence in the L1 after, let's say, 10 people translated it there and back. And of course, finish the sentence, something which is very fast and very effective. Especially love it for grammars like conditional clauses, because I always create sentences like, if I were a princess, if I had $1 million, if I could go anywhere around the world. And the students just have to finish it. That's what we do at the beginning. And then when the students are more familiar with the new grammar, I ask them to create the beginnings on their own. And they have to, again, nominate somebody who would just finish the sentence. And last but not least, definitely find somebody who. So depending on the grammar you want to practice, you create a set of activities, and the children are to find somebody who watched TV yesterday, who played football yesterday, who read a book yesterday, or who will do something tomorrow. So again, you can either put lots of things together, or you can just focus on one of that specific grammar, and then you can practice the one thoroughly, and the children can get used to the forms. At the very end of each lesson, we probably would like to get any kind of feedback, because we need to know whether the children really learned, what they are taking home, what they're not taking home. And this always helps us not only to find out how the whole lesson worked, but also to prepare for the next lesson. And for this, I love using something which is called exit tickets. These are like tiny little pieces of paper, which work in the way that the students get the piece of paper at the end of the lesson. Their task is to answer my questions, or basically they have to finish the task I'm asking them to do, and they leave it on my desk. And that's the way how they can leave the lesson, because that's the exit ticket. So one way how to create exit tickets is just basically, today I learned, or I need to know more about. I especially use it after we do some kind of tough grammar part, which would give me a kind of idea of what the children really remember and understand and what they don't. And here the exit ticket is in English, but it's rather because I want us to understand each other, especially with lower levels. I use exit tickets in their L1 so that they can really tell me what they learned and what they need to know more about. So they can express in Czech, in my case, because I want them to really tell me what's going on in their heads. Another form of an exit ticket might be a kind of tiny little test. In each, let's say, cloud, there is some space for an answer. This one was a gap fill, and I had 4 sentences where they were to fill in the gaps with the correct form of the verb, and their task was just to write down whether one is A, B, C, or D, and the same for 2, 3, and 4. So I didn't know whose answer are whose, but I have kind of overall idea of how the whole class is doing with the grammar. Well, we are nearly at the end of not just this session, but the whole day. And so therefore, I would like to ask you if you have any questions to ask or any comments you would like to mention here. And meanwhile, I would like to thank you very much for being so cooperative and active, and really great audience. And really, once more, thank you for having me, because it was really amazing to be here with you the whole day.